Yes, I was born in the Warsaw Ghetto in 1941 in October the 24th. My mother and father, they were in the Warsaw Ghetto, and they'd only been married a year, and despite all the difficulties, they had a child. This was a very big thing in that particular time, but they were very much in love, and I think that the natural thing is to have an offspring and a child.
Henry Buch, then known as Henyek, was born to Sevek and Helena Sarah Buch amidst the misery of life in the Warsaw Ghetto. Because of the increasing dangers for Jews trapped there, his uncle organised for the infant Henry to be smuggled out of the ghetto, wrapped up as a parcel. After surviving this daring escape, Henry then lived in hiding on the Aryan side of Warsaw, initially with his family and later elsewhere in Poland in an orphanage. In August 1942, his father was captured by the Gestapo and sent to work camps near Lublin. Henry's mother and uncle tried to get him out.
So when my uncle found out where he was, he went to find out how he could help him. And they noticed that there was a cobbler who went in and out to fix things. And he gave him some money and he said, here's some money for Sevek, right, Buch, and whatever you can do for him, do. Here's some money, letters and all the rest of it, and I'll try and get him out. So the cobbler took the money, but he never did anything.
You mean he didn't give it to your father?
No. So he betrayed him.
Mm.
And I have donated the letters of my father's to my mother, asking questions and telling my mother, who he thought was ignoring him, perhaps in his mind. He never got the letters, and my mother never got the letters. And I've donated all the letters. They're very pathetic.
When Henry describes his father's letters as pathetic, he means that they are sad and desperate, full of pathos, because of the brutal and helpless situation he found himself in. Overworked, exhausted, starving. Sevek eventually ended up in Poniatowa slave labour camp, which became part of nearby Majdanek camp. In May 1943, Sevek wrote,
"Again, I have lost contact with you, dear. The letters which I used to receive from you gave me a lot of hope, and now I am very sad. I don't have any news from you, and I would love so much to hear from you. How Heniuszek is? How is the family? If your father is better, how is your mother? I miss you so much, and tomorrow is the 20th birthday of Heniuszek. My heart is bleeding. I would love so much to be able to see him. It is my only purpose in life to be able to see you all."
Sevek pulls no punches as he describes the true horror of the slave labour camps.
"You have to understand that I am working under very strenuous conditions, sometimes 12 hours or longer, and sometimes 18 hours without a break, and later on very hard planks to rest on. We dread every day what the day will bring, because we can see that our end is coming."
And in his second last letter he writes,
"I am living from minute to minute, and I am suffering physically and mentally. When you have to fight about a piece of dry bread, when you live from one day to the other, you think all the time about your dearest ones which you lost, because my life now is only struggle. We are on our feet 18 to 20 hours. You have nowhere to lie down, you walk around hungry and in rags. And still, I am thinking about my dearest and how they are. My future is non-existent, and I know that the end is coming."
In his final short postcard, dated 11 October 1943, he complains about the lack of communication and begs for money for warm clothes.
I am kissing Henryszek and his mother. Regards for the family and friends. Always lonesome. Stanisław Książkowski.
Although we can never know for sure, as there is no record and no grave for him, Sevek was most likely murdered in November 1943 as part of the so-called autumn harvest, the Enterfest, when all the Jews from this and nearby camps were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators.
When we go on March of the Living, Pauline always reads those letters at Majdanek, because there was a forced march from Lublin to Majdanek, and I made a prayer at the spot where there was mass graves, and he's somewhere there.
Over a 2-day period, the SS executed 42,000 Jews by shooting them into pits in one of the bloodiest mass executions of the war. Around 15,000 were Jews from Poniatowa labour camp.
My mother went to see the cobbler after the war, because I think my father died very distressed that he was just there, nobody cared, alone, cold, alone. He was begging for some clothes, a couple of groschen to buy himself something or to give something. You know, it was very sad, very pathetic. And my mother went to the cobbler and said, "What happened?" And he says, I couldn't do it, it was too hard. And, oh yeah, but he kept the money, and he says, "I got something for you." And he gave her these pile of letters.
Henry and his mother survived, but Henry grew up without a father, and with nothing but the knowledge that his father suffered so much at the end, yet kept going in the hope that he might one day be reunited with the wife and the baby son he desperately missed.